DVMCP. Banks create money out of thin air.
What?
Someone here said it really well. Cashu is like a credit layer on top of Bitcoin.
No. I need to use that. I'm not going to haggle with you.
I can't. It's a machine. You're asking the right question, but that's really not like a conversation for like this podcast.
You're listening to Flirting with Bitcoin, a weekly chat with my very interesting husband about Bitcoin and how the world and our family's life is better because of it.
It's season 4, and we've moved to Nostr City.
So my Bitcoin lessons are done?
Your Bitcoin lessons are never done.
So what does new social media have to do with it?
Babe, Nostr is more than social media. If Bitcoin is the new money, Nostr is the new internet.
You really think so?
I do. I believe Nostr will drive the next wave of Bitcoin adoption. So Nostr City is where we need to be.
We?
Yeah, of course we're bringing Keon. You got your bags packed, buddy?
Yes.
Good job. Don't forget to pack your NPub.
Let's go. Hey, Ian.
Hey, Mandana.
We are about to head into week 5 of the Sovereign Engineering Program, Cohort 4, here in sometimes sunny, usually windy Madeira.
It's windy because it's spring.
It's a better spring here than back home, but it is definitely spring.
Yeah, we've pretty much been hit by like hurricanes for a couple of days. They're not real hurricanes, but as a person who's been in many hurricanes, it feels like you're in a hurricane.
So it's the pirate experience, right? Even though we're on land, it's almost as if we're out at sea.
Yeah, it's just a big island. It's
yeah,
just a big
exploring
boat.
new places, exploring new technology.
Islands are just boats that don't move.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow, babe. Those are
you
some
go.
major insights
There you
you're
go.
having here. But yes, we are entering week 5. And after 4 weeks, we have learned so much. And we've made so many new decisions for NextBlock. But more generally, the innovation that Ian and I are trying to put forth to grow Nostr, which is an ad network on Nostr. It's always been a challenge for us to explain what we're trying to do succinctly when it comes to the company that we're trying to build, and then also this decentralized attention marketplace.
Yeah, so one of the things I would say, just listening to you, is I think from now on, we should not call it the attention marketplace or ads. What we're doing is creating a decentralized promotion content capability of Nostr, which is very different than ads, because promotion content can be anything. It's not necessarily trying to sell you something. Ads tend to be wanting to sell you something. And so that'd be a good example of like coming here and talking a lot and really understanding like, what is it that I'm building, or what is it that we're building? And how the Nostr protocol works is that most of the time with these NIPs, you're adding like one piece of functionality, right? So it's like there's a NIP for reposting, right? Or there's a NIP for zapping, right? That's like a one thing or one.
Look at you trying to not be too technical.
No, one event per NIP. And what we're doing is that we need a bunch of events. Like we need at least 2 events for sure. But as I'm working on this and discussing it with other people, like I'm seeing, okay, I need an event for that. I need an event for that. And so because what we're trying to build requires multiple events, it's kind of hard to present it in the typical Nostr form, which is a single NIP.
Right. I would say even simply us understanding how to best communicate our idea has been, up until this point, challenging.
Especially to the Nostr community, Nostr developers. But that's from coming here and seeing how some other people have built, ironically, very similar concepts, just solving a different problem. But the architecture and the NIP design is almost identical. And so I've seen that pattern repeated here a couple of times. And I was like, oh, that's the pattern for NextBlock. Like that's the pattern for what we're trying to build, which I didn't really have that, engineering design pattern in my head. But fundamentally, that's what I've been trying to do. And so seeing it multiple times working was my signal that, okay, I need to rethink what we're doing in those terms.
And taking a step back, it's very interesting to see what long-term or in the longer short term is going to succeed in terms of adoption within the Nostr development community, because These are, I think, some of the brightest minds that are creating the infrastructure that everyone else is going to need to use to build out. And I'm not going to pretend like I understand everything. But I know at the end of this last week, when the demos happened, very clearly to me, there are major tools that are available now for developers to build on Nostr that weren't here 4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago for sure, but they definitely weren't available for the first cohort of sovereign engineering.
Yeah.
They exist because of sovereign engineering.
Yeah, it's really cool. So before we get into all the stuff we've learned, what time is it, babe?
The current time is, this is an interesting one. The current time is 890098. I believe that's a palindrome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. First palindrome recording.
And if I gave you $1, I should just be saying euro because I live in euros now. But if I gave you $1, how many acres could I get on sunny Bitcoin Island?
Today, you could get 1,193 acres, aka Satoshis, on sunny Bitcoin Island.
So we always talk about converting to Satoshis, right, in your brain. We've lived in Europe for a month now. Is your brain doing the euro conversion well?
No.
Neither is mine. I saw this TikTok once that was like, I don't even think about money when I'm in another country with a different currency. I just hope it all works out. But I'll just pay things out, not really trying to figure out if it's worth it or not.
I mean, yeah, when you're traveling, you should be money conscious, but if it's something you want to do and you're not going to be there to do it again, like if it doesn't sound outrageous, it's probably okay.
Yeah, I will say like berries aren't that easy to find here. And we bought berries for our son. And my mom just now was like, oh, how much were these? Because it was like very well packaged and cleaned and washed. We cannot find just a pack of berries that you would wash yourselves or anything. It's just very fancy. Mom said, how much is that? And I said, I have no idea. Does it matter? We needed these berries. We have a toddler who needs to eat berries.
Yeah.
Or he'll attack us.
I love how y'all live in fear of a 2-year-old.
I'm not
a hungry
the only
2-year-old.
But yeah, so it takes some time for the mind to convert those things. And interestingly enough, Ian and I are trying to finalize some screens of our Billboard app. And the experience of like settling on currency has been a little tricky because like Ian wanted there to be a currency set just once within the app and you say this is the currency you want to use, but that's just not how it played out. But I was actually thinking about it, babe. We're going to want people to toggle back and forth from Bitcoin and their own currency as they're setting the price of attention, selling attention, setting their bids, because they're going to have to play back and forth with Bitcoin and USD, for example, so that they keep getting a hang of like, okay, well, how much are sats worth?
I understand that. That's why I thought the system-wide toggle would have been cool, because you would start in your local currency, USD or whatever, and you would constantly see this like smaller number always being displayed next to your money, right? And that would be the sats. And so eventually one day you would just be like, okay, well, that looks interesting. Okay, I want to see it in that all the time. And you just toggle it. And now you see the sats and you see that your former currency is now the thing that's small in parentheses. And that would just have been like a very simple way for people to, for sure, toggle back and forth, but you really only are going to be thinking in one or the other.
Yeah.
You're either like, I want $1 for my attention or I want 1,000 sats for my attention. And unfortunately or fortunately, like because we price the system in sats, if you set your price in your local currency, you're going to experience volatility, right? But if you set your price for your attention in sats, you will always get the same amount of sats. If you care about how much that converts into dollars, then you should leave your settings in dollars.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how people play it out. Thinking in Bitcoin is not an easy milestone to achieve in the Bitcoin journey.
No, and it's just like people coming to Europe and converting USD to euros. It's like eventually you're like, I guess whatever. Like,
give me those raspberries.
Yeah, it's like I got to pay for parking in cash. Like it doesn't matter what the conversion is. You say €5, I give you €5.
Yeah, I'm not going to haggle with you.
I can't. It's a machine. There's not even a person to haggle with. But yeah, I think that's just like that's like leftover fiat brain stuff that when you go back and interact in these like old systems, especially when it's like a cash based system, I don't even know how many Satoshis it is for €1. I don't know. Maybe I should know. for this trip, but I just haven't bothered.
Next trip.
Yeah, next trip. Yeah, for sure.
Get the power back. Get the freedom back. Get an MPub. And just start with that.
All right. So you might be thinking, gosh, are they going to do another episode on the Sovereign Engineering Program? Yes, we are, because it is a really cool program. And I think that even if you're not a developer, it's an inside look in how decentralized technology is built and grown. I'm not sure if something like this existed for Bitcoin, but it exists for Nostr. And that's really special. And I'm not sure how much access or information someone who's just jumping into Nostr has about this program. But it's definitely worth paying attention to, at least what comes out of this program. There'll be announcements on the different projects that were worked on. And I think everyone should take a look if they're not even developers, but trying to understand like, well, what's possible. And I think for me, even like, what did we not even have before now? And so there are people that are in the Sovereign Engineering Program that I would say like the first or second week, I just heard random words like, oh yeah, in the first cohort, that person made that. In the second cohort, this came out. Or, you know, in the demos that people are doing or the talks, they'll mention a different program or tool or something. And I have no idea exactly how big of a deal it is that they made that they're here also building other things, that they're listening to our idea and they're asking questions that are then like guiding you, Ian, to clean stuff up. But the really, really cool thing about being around all of these great minds is how focused their long-term vision is for Nostr and how much they want to eliminate dependencies on centralized tools. And so I'm not a developer, so I don't even know what tools you need to build, period, let alone like what tools you need to build on Nostr, period. What tools you need to build decentrally on Nostr, period, right? But there's some cool new stuff that you've learned about that I think you should just, share the wealth. Tell the world what's out there, what maybe at first didn't click for you. And you were like, I don't need to use that. And then you're like, oh, no, I need to use that. Yeah. And I'll say like the general approach or attitude of all of the people in this program are very like, I would say not aggressive. So no one's trying to like shove their innovation down your throat, but they'll very gently be like, do you see why you should be using this? I would use it if I were you. And I just love that. It's just, I'm such a fan of all of these people. And, hopefully we do right by them, all that they've already built to make what we're trying to build possible and like possibly be part of this community. It's just really cool. I'm really excited. As excited as I can be, even though I don't like fully understand everything. Well, I'll pass it on to you now, babe.
Yeah, so calling it the, engineering department of Nostr, I think is more fitting today than it was when I first said it. Yes, a lot of things that are being adopted pretty quickly on Nostr came out of here, particularly Zapstore, which is a decentralized Android, store for apps, which doesn't have the Google like deciding what apps are allowed in the App Store feature. For them, it's a feature. For us, it's a bug, right? And that's really cool because now with Zapstore, we have the ability to distribute apps to anyone who doesn't have an iPhone, basically. But it's not even really an app store in that sense. It's just for everyone who is not a developer and has been calling it app stores, okay, that's what it is. It's an app store. But it's just software distribution. That's all it is. And we've always had these things, whether it was on some centralized website or on BitTorrent. Like we've always had ways to distribute software. But, Google and Apple just spent multiple decades training everyone on these words, the App Store and Play Store. And it's like, there's a place you go to get apps. Well, they don't own that concept of a place you go to get apps.
The assumption is that if it's on their app store, it's a safe app to download. There's not going to be a virus. It's not going to make your phone explode.
Sure, because what they've done is said the internet is scary. and you don't trust everybody, so you should trust us and we'll protect you from the scary internet. That's basically Apple's selling point for their app store.
Mm-hmm.
Google to a lesser extent, but it's the same selling point. And Zapstore makes the complete opposite value proposition. It says the internet is scary and we don't want to do the work of protecting you. So we built in a social layer to our app store where if someone you know installed this, we will show you that someone you know has installed it, or someone who's, high ranked in the community, like Jack Dorsey, for example. Like if Jack Dorsey has installed an app through Zapstore, we all see it. And so that's a easier way to verify that, like, well, if Jack has the problem, I have the problem too.
Wait, so does that mean that if like someone downloads the grinder of Nostr, everyone will see it?
If it's distributed through Zapstore.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and like that's the model. And so like Zapstore, so for example, Apple and Google have literally teams of people that just review apps that are submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Zapstore doesn't have anybody.
It's like a milestone for companies when the Apple Store approves the app.
I mean, depending on what you're doing, but yeah.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. So the point is that like Apple and Google have monopolized software distribution because we all have cell phones and they've convinced us this is the only way to get apps. And so with Nostr, not specifically because of Nostr, but some of the technology that Nostr enables, we now have an app store for everyone who calls it an app store that uses your social circle to help you figure out what apps to use. And without Google or Apple sitting in the middle of you and the person who made the software, you can pay the developer as much as you want, not like some set price tiers that Apple has decided or Google has decided so that they can have all these apps sitting side by side in these like buckets of value that they've kind of made up. Like, oh, these are the apps that are under $5. These are the apps under $20. Like, okay, but like, why are you grouping them like that? And so on Nostr, you have a social graph that can go into any app. And on Nostr, you have Zaps, aka Lightning transactions, which allow you to pay people directly. So if you, like us, are building an app today and you want to be on Nostr, then your goal should not be to be in the App Store first. Your goal should be in the Zapstore first. Apple and Google, sure, at some point in the future, you want to be in there as well if you can, but your main distribution channel is literally a piece of software that came out of sovereign engineering. And so that's the type of things that are coming out of here. And so to me, it's like, if Nostr were a corporation, for example, nobody would have authorized the making of Zapstore. I can't inject myself in the middle and take a cut.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing it?
I see.
Right? Whereas what Zapstore did was say, I'm not injecting myself in the middle to take a cut, but I think that what I create will create enough value that people will just pay me and support me and keep continuing to work on this. And so it's a different way of having an engineering department where everyone is open to solve the problems that they see without having to get sign off from a boss. And maybe you work on something that has no value. That's on you, right? You put your energy and time into that thing. But if it does have a lot of value, then by design, you can only really capture so much of it, because if you did it in an open source way and you're using a standardized protocol, like somebody can copy it, right? Like someone can copy Zapstore, but in a community of 100 to 200 developers, maybe 500, like that's just a dick move. Don't do that, bro. Like, let's just use the one that works.
Yeah.
Whereas in, Silicon Valley, it's like if they see anything making traction, all of a sudden Apple has one, Facebook has one, Google has one, like they all just copy each other.
Well, I think that's also the interesting nuance to all of this is whatever comes first is probably the one we're all going to use forever.
That's not 100% true. I think whatever comes first defines what the next thing is.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like, it's similar to Bitcoin and crypto. It's like Bitcoin's first. Anybody who comes after Bitcoin has to convince everyone who already has Bitcoin why they should use this new thing instead of Bitcoin. And so you never get everybody. You just never get everybody to switch over. And so there will always be a core group of users of any type of thing that are like, no, this is good enough. I don't have that problem. Like, you might have a problem. That's why you're creating your new thing, but I don't have that problem. And so in the decentralized world where everyone can just jump around to any app they want to provide them services, you kind of have to give the people what they want.
Tell me about Blossom.
So, as I was describing it to you in the non-technical way, Blossom is basically Google Drive for Nostr, rather than it being controlled by a corporation. It's done in a very decentralized manner. But fundamentally, it's a protocol with a set of endpoints that if you say you are a Blossom server, people can upload files to your Blossom server, but they can be referenced in a ubiquitous way on Nostr. They can mirror between other Blossom servers, and so it just like it helps people host the content that makes the internet, right? Like images and HTML files and stuff like that. So Blossom is really interesting because, as the story goes, or at least as I've heard it told, like the guy who created it, he thought it was a dumb idea.
Wow.
And everyone kind of encouraged him, like, no, like put it out there. Let's see what happens.
This was the first cohort?
I don't know which cohort it was.
It was one of them.
But it was one of them. It might have been the first one, actually, because I was paying attention to the first one. And I remember seeing Blossom as like one of the first things that caught my attention. Like, okay, that's pretty cool. That's what came out of here. All right. And so just like a little inside baseball on the Blossom thing, when I started working on NextBlock, I was like, well, of course I'm going to use Blossom. Like, I understand what this is. Cool, whatever. So I started building a prototype using Blossom. And then I decided, like, okay, this is actually going to be like its own thing. Like running a Blossom server is like its own thing. I don't want to do that. Not that
you do kind of like shy away whenever something seems overly complicated.
It's not that it's overly complicated. It's that there are people that are providing this as a service that I could just pay. And I know they don't have a lot of customers because they're only providing services to Nostr users, right? So why would I literally take business from them that I'm going to not serve as well as they would working on it full time? So I reached out to the Nostr build guys. They are the main file hoster in Nostr. And we were talking, great conversation. And I just mentioned Blossom. And at the time, he was like, I don't know about this Blossom thing. Like he listed off a bunch of reasons why he thought it wasn't going to work. This is just like classic engineer stuff, like I was like, whatever. But like, what if I did the Blossom on my side and then I pushed it through to you and it didn't matter? And then we like kind of thought that through and that wasn't going to work. And I was like, well, like whatever, like if you're hosting the file, like, cause I was asking him, like, can we just do everything through you? And so that was like the deal that we were working out. And I was like, yeah, well, whatever you're doing is what we'll do. And maybe, in the future, maybe you'll change your mind. That's kind of where I left it. So while we've been here, now Nostr build supports Blossom.
Really?
Yes. And so I saw the post and I just, knowing the conversation that I had with them, I just thought that was really funny because it's like, yeah, probably he's getting a lot of pressure from everybody saying that they want this service or this capability. And you're the main provider of file hosting in Nostr. So your customers are demanding Blossom. And so he just implements Blossom.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool way to influence what is a private company, right? Nostr Build is a private company that has paid services and all of those things, free services as well. But, to show how decentralized technology as it grows can make that influence and have it be organic is really cool. And it didn't hurt their business because they didn't have it. But for us, to the extent that we can just make those decisions right up front, because the people who built those tools are right here, is so helpful because it just, I've seen it force the matter on you.
Well, yeah. So like, again, one of the other big things about decentralized software, and for lack of a better term, we'll just call our company like a micro company, right? It's really just me and you, right? You really have to pick and choose what are the things that you are going to do. And, in the classic, Silicon Valley startup world, you would go out and hire an engineering department and say, here's what I want, make it happen. And I can't do that. So I have to pick what I'm going to focus on before I even tell someone what I want. That I'm not going to have an engineering department. It's going to be me and maybe two other people, but it's not a department, right? And so because of that, it's like everything we can offload that we don't have to do, that we can pay someone to do as a service, especially if they're a Nostr developer like Nostr Build, we should pay them. They should just be a line item on the budget. If it doesn't make sense financially, it doesn't make sense financially, sure. but we should figure out what the total cost is and make it make sense.
Right. Because first of all, those people are solving those problems. They've solved a lot of those problems already, and they're continuing to think about it at a level that we're just not going to.
And I'm not going to know about the problems until I encounter them versus you have encountered them and solved them.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the second piece of that is we're not just trying to bring ad revenue in here for nothing. Like we understand that ads are what pay for all of these supposedly free apps. And as part of that are the technology and services that are supporting that experience. And so the whole point of NextBlock is that everyone gets paid. And so, yeah, Nostr Build, you figure out how to do decentralized file hosting to the extent possible with the tools that Nostr developers are building, and we'll just keep paying you because you're doing everything that we would want to happen. It's just that we don't have to be managing that ourselves.
And they also take on one big part of the liability, which is what actually gets uploaded. So NextBlock itself doesn't have any files. NextBlock itself doesn't, store what you upload on the NextBlock servers. Like, that's going to Nostr Build, and they have their own processes of what they allow and disallow.
Mm-hmm.
And since they're a business and they don't want to go to jail, they're following the law.
And I think for a company to take on that level of liability in this day and age, like, kudos to them. Let's pay them. Let's help them succeed. Let's help them really support an important piece of the infrastructure for the Nostr experience.
Yeah. And for a good example of this would be, because it didn't exist, but the Nostr Build guys, I know it's at least two of them, they didn't come to sovereign engineering and build that with like decentralization in mind, right? They basically built a business, a file hosting business, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then something came out of sovereign engineering that basically said to them, like, if you don't do this, you might be out of business, because we now have a way to do it where you unintentionally centralized yourself. And so some people don't like the fact that they follow the law.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, I can't upload this to Nostr Build. It's like, yeah, because we don't want to go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put that on your own Blossom server, so be it.
Right. You don't need our permission.
But now the difference is that those files, as far as the Nostr network is concerned, are equivalent. It's not a Nostr Build file versus a Blossom file. They're both the same, file structure URL. And that is what makes Nostr decentralized. Because now if you go to another client, it doesn't have to be, do they support Nostr Build or some other thing? It's like, does it support Blossom? And you don't really care which Blossom server you're uploading to now.
So 2 major innovations that have come out of this program, hopefully easy to understand. But before we get into like some of the more technical stuff, I want a cliffhanger for the next break. We have an improved version of what is called an MCP. Is that right? Did I say that correctly?
No.
Dang, how do I say it?
Well, we have is a very generous way of saying it also. Okay.
Nostr. Us,
So
the people.
Someone has
leading the revolution.
Let's just go to the break and we'll just explain it. I can't say it as a cliffhanger. I just have to say it.
Get the power back. Get the freedom back. Get an MPub. And just start with that.
You will be pleased to know that somehow on my TikTok algorithm, a video explaining what an MCP came up. And I was like, whoa, wait, is this what they're talking about in the program?
Mm-hmm.
What is this? And I watched it. I didn't fully understand it. I saved it to show it to you. And then life got in the way. So walk me through this. You have several times, in a sense, said it's like a server. But I really want to understand, because it seems that beyond Bitcoin, beyond Nostr, MCP is like this new thing that's changing everything.
Changing everything is, again, these are all generous terms, right? So
am I sensationalizing all of this?
You are sensationalizing the wrong part.
Okay.
So AI has existed for a while, and the best by a while, I don't know, it's like a couple years now, but like whatever. AI has existed kind of in these silos, right? And the most popular one that people have heard the most about is ChatGPT. So ChatGPT I wasn't there. I wasn't in the room when it happened, but fundamentally they scraped the entire internet or as much of the internet as they could to train this AI model. And after they've scraped all that data, they have an AI model, but so when someone else builds another AI model, they don't have access to the same data that they use to build their model. So everyone's model is now a little bit different based on the training data that you have, right? And so there's a company called Anthropic, and they've been working on a bunch of AI tools and models and stuff like that. And you could think of them as like, not really, but let's just say like the Nostr of AI, if you will. Like they make a lot of things and then give them away. Or they make a lot of things and they're not doing it in they're not doing it like ChatGPT is what I will say. They are the opposite of ChatGPT. And so a lot of people like their stuff. A lot of people use their stuff that are in AI. And so basically what happened is that Anthropic created this thing called MCP, Model Context Protocol. And what it is it's a protocol that enables different contexts. So like if you're reviewing a movie, you could pass in some context about the movie if you're asking a question about movies, or if you're asking a question about music or art, like you can feed the AI in that moment additional information for it to use to like create its analysis and answer your question or provide you a service. And because of the way they did it, it's literally anyone can plug into anything now. So MCP became this very pluggable protocol where all these guys that were in silos now could now kind of interact and communicate, plus like all these other data sets that exist on the internet, right? Like,
and this is for developers, like a non-developer.
If it's got the word protocol in it, it's probably for developers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right?
Okay. I can't use this.
But you do use it. That's the thing, right? You use MCP because you're using tools that use MCP.
It's just that my results are more refined.
Something like
theoretically, the quality of my responses, replies, information that's generated from my prompts have improved.
Yes. And so that's great. That's great and all. But one of the silos that exists is Nostr, right? So Nostr only exists in search results if you have like GitHub repos about Nostr stuff or whatever. I don't believe Google is like indexing the entire Nostr protocol. So one of the guys here made DVMCP. And before we get into what that is, we have to explain this other innovation that happened called DVMs. And so DVMs are data vending machines. I've talked about them as a possible part of the NextBlock system, right? It's like, and there's some DVM action over here on the side somewhere. I knew there was going to be a DVM involved. I just didn't understand how or where or why. But DVMs are a way to basically expose functionality to the Nostr protocol, similar to MCP, right? So MCP exposes different contexts to AIs. DVMs expose different functionality to the Nostr protocol. A good example would be Bitcoin price, right? So like if you want the Bitcoin price on Nostr, there's no URL you can go to get the Bitcoin price. You have to go onto the internet, Coinbase, Strike, whatever, some API on the internet and make an API request, an HTTP request, and that's how you get the Bitcoin price.
And a DVM is basically like something that plugs into the MCP that gives it the extra data it needs for the context that it's working in.
You're jumping a little bit ahead, but sure, why not? So what was created is DVMCP, which allows people on Nostr to access MCPs over Nostr. So I send a Nostr event to a relay, and there's an MCP server that's running that's listening for certain events from the same relay. So I send a Nostr event to a relay. It gets picked up by some other server somewhere on the planet that also happens to be listening to that relay for that event. It does the job and it returns me the results, right? So if I want the price of Bitcoin, I can just send a DVMCP request to a DVM that I know that exists and say, give me the price of Bitcoin. I don't really care how it gets the price of Bitcoin. Maybe it did go out to the internet and ask Coinbase or Strike. Maybe it did do that. I don't know. I didn't have to build it. I just asked for the price of Bitcoin and it comes back to me through my socket.
And it's because someone has already gotten that price, or it'll pull it and it'll be the fastest way to get it. And it'll just come to you as fast as possible.
So the short answer is yes, right? Like if I'm in anywhere on the planet connected to a relay and you're anywhere on the planet connected to a relay, that's just a one hop between the two of us.
So what this does is it makes AI requests like easier, faster, within more context than possibly these companies that are becoming AI giants are going to be focusing on.
So you added the layer of AI on there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's unnecessary.
Okay.
Is my point. So what I just described is just Nostr to Nostr. There was nothing about AI.
Okay.
The innovation of that is he's using the MCP protocol to enable that.
I see.
And he created DVMCP, right? So DVMs alone don't operate like that. DVMCPs do. That's the difference, right? And so DVMCPs are take how MCP works and make your DVM work behind that instead of calling the DVM directly.
And can you explain how this improves the design of NextBlock?
So this improves a specific part of the design of NextBlock, which is how do we actually decentralize the marketplace, right? So we have in our new thing that we'll talk about later, but we have buyers and sellers that we've been saying before. And let's just say hypothetically, we're only NextBlock. Only NextBlock is doing this thing and everyone's entering all of their buys and sells into our system. And someone else goes, oh, you know what? I want to try that. I want to access your data. I want to build my own marketplace. And, it's just Nostr data. It's not our data. It's just Nostr data. So how does that person get that data? Well, the first way they could do it is they could just query the relay for all of the data, right? And say, I want all the sellers, all the buyers, right? And I'll do my own thing over here in my own server. Or with DVMCP, we can actually also expose all the different pieces of functionality that make NextBlock work so that person coming behind us doesn't have to build all of that to create his own marketplace. He can just say, okay, I'm going to use all your functionality and your relay and your data. I'm just going to create a different experience. And so we've been using like the marketplace language of buyers and sellers. Maybe he wants to use the like gardening language of, plants and trees or whatever. Maybe he wants to use some other type of like analogy for his way of doing his billboard, right? Of his marketing. He doesn't have to use the word billboard either. He could use a whole different analogy, but the actual Nostr events that his app is creating are identical, right? And so with DVMCP, instead of NextBlock building what we normally would have done, which is an API on something like Amazon, that's how we would have exposed all of our functionality and let people do this outside of Nostr. Now, we just build a DVMCP, we put all of our functionality in there and say, we might build the other API also, but because we're trying to be decentralized with other Nostr builders, they need this first. They don't actually need a REST API.
So does that mean right now we're not going to be using Amazon Web Services?
That's a way different.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, that's a big dependency that's been removed, like a big centralized dependency that's been removed.
You're asking the right question, but that's really not like a conversation for like this podcast.
Okay.
The short answer is that there are certain things that Amazon provides that we still want to use. There are certain things that we don't need to run this on Amazon at all. And DVMCP just opens the door to a lot more things that you don't need to run on Amazon.
Interesting.
Which means you could theoretically run NextBlock off my laptop.
Got it. So
as long as you keep it plugged in.
Do you think that your aha moment happened all at once, or did this take some time for you to fully grasp like why it was important that you integrated it?
I mean, I always knew that DVMs were going to play a role. And I think the reason why DVMCP exists is because as I understood it before, it just wouldn't have fit. And now with DVMCP, it's like, oh, that's what I thought data vending machines were, but that's not what they are. now, the analogy I was giving is when you said it's a server, it's like it is a server, but like there's a very specific server that I've worked with for a long time, and it pretty much works like that. And so for me, I was like, oh, that's how you do this? Oh, I can totally do that. That's not even hard. That's what I do.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden when the missing pieces come together, it becomes familiar technology for you again.
Yes. And so you have to change the language, you have to change the concepts, but it's all familiar. I know how to build like this, right? Like Nostr it's funny, kind of what happened with JavaScript. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but I'm going to make it. JavaScript was like this programming language that really wasn't supposed to do much. It was just supposed to like help you move things in your browser, maybe show and hide some images, maybe a button click, right? Like JavaScript was not supposed to be what like a large portion of the internet runs on today, right? And I feel like that's what's happening with Nostr. Like Nostr was designed as like, not designed, but Nostr's first iteration in the world was like, oh, I'm just like this other place you can post notes to, right? Like, and there's some other stuff coming, but mostly it's just Twitter without Twitter. And now with like DVMCP, it's like, oh, but now we're going to make Nostr work for us.
So every Friday there is demos and then there's a barbecue for everyone in the program. So that's, when you can really like hang around and talk to people. I was talking to one of the other developers who this is the first cohort for them as well. And he and I both agreed that we didn't really understand what Nostr was. I don't know if a lot of people even understand what Nostr is. Truly what Nostr is, what is going to be capable and possible through Nostr on Nostr. But yeah, each of these new tools that come unlock so much more around what's possible. And I think if you're trying to grow Nostr, you have to just have that optimism and faith that people are going to solve these problems. If it's not you, someone else will. But it seems like a lot of people are understanding how important it is to replicate the tools, the centralized tools for this decentralized space. It continues to be incredibly inspiring to see and just very humbling, because then when you're out in the public and people are like, what's Nostr? It's like, whoa, how do I even begin to explain to you what Nostr is? I don't know. I don't know what the sentence that can truly do it justice.
It is a lot bigger than the people who should be interested in it but aren't for whatever their personal reasons are. They haven't really grasped it. Very similar to Bitcoin.
It's just history repeating itself.
Get the power back, get the freedom back, get an MPub, and just start with that.
All right, Ian, we could do Satoshi for your thoughts, or we could just explain what Cashu is, because I think I left it on a cliffhanger before. But the people deserve to know. The people, like the other stuff that we've been talking about today, they might hear about it. They don't know exactly what it is. You were one of those people. Now you really understand it. I think you've been evangelized. Lay it out for us.
I haven't been evangelized. I see where it's going, and it's going to be really cool. It is really cool. But Cashu is, someone here said it really well. Cashu is like a credit layer on top of Bitcoin. And so if you think of Bitcoin as gold, then you keep your gold in a bank, right? And you basically only transfer your gold between banks, right? And as we all know, banks, or maybe we don't all know, but I think if you're listening to this podcast, banks create money out of thin air. And
what?
Yeah, spoiler alert. But creating it out of thin air isn't the problem. It's when you create more of it than your gold can cover, right? Because the money itself that the bank creates is just there so them not have to take the gold out of the bank. So you can walk around town with paper instead of gold. So Cashu provides that functionality to Bitcoin. You can take your Bitcoin out of the bank via this thing called eCash, right? So your Bitcoin is still in the bank. It hasn't moved, right? Maybe it got there over Lightning, but it's still in the bank. And what you have is this string of text that represents a claim on a certain amount of Bitcoin in the bank. They're called mints in Cashu. And so with these claims, you can go around to other people that take these claims and you can exchange them for goods and services, right? And as long as they're willing to accept it, they're basically saying, well, I'll turn this in at the bank that gave it to you if I actually want the Bitcoin. But maybe I don't want the Bitcoin. Maybe I just want to give it to someone else. And so eCash creates this like cash society for Bitcoiners, where some of the people here are working on stuff where you can pay for internet using this eCash. You can, pay for your position in a queue with eCash.
You can even give it as like one of the really cool use cases that someone set up is that after you buy coffee from a coffee shop, in the receipt they can put an NFC tag that has Cashu on it, and they can spend it on Wi-Fi in the cafe, or they can spend it somewhere else. But the cool thing about eCash is that you can put an expiration on it. And so you're not just like giving out a bunch of money that no one ever cashes in. If maybe you say after a day they don't cash it in, I get the value back. That's perfect. It actually solves our problem that we're having with Sats cards, that we give Sats cards as gifts to people, and we don't really know whether or not they've stored them safely. A year passes, we say, oh, bring us your Sats card. We can re-up it for their birthday gift, and we don't get them back. So I feel like Cashu solves that problem for us specifically, but then also a bunch of different business use cases that are going to come out of preferring something like this, which is a more credit-based system than the direct peer-to-peer transactions that businesses might not want.
Yeah, and the thing about Cashu that I didn't really understand, and I'll be honest, the part about this all that I didn't understand was...
Let's get real, babe.
That conversion from eCash back into Bitcoin. What I didn't really grok about all of that was there are individual people who are choosing to take on the responsibility of running a piece of software that behaves as this bank, as this mint, right? And so you and I can download the software right now, run it on our computer, and we could be a mint. We could be making eCash from some Bitcoin, right? And everyone here who's doing all these little demos, like they could be using eCash from our mint, but we're taking on the responsibility that our mint doesn't get hacked, that our mint runs an honest mint and doesn't print more eCash, right? Like you're taking on all that responsibility. And so if you do run a mint improperly, you can go bankrupt, right? You could lose all your Bitcoin or whatever, rug pull people and, but that doesn't affect everyone else's eCash. And I think it just affects the eCash that came out of your mint.
And the cool side to that is eCash doesn't solve every problem, right? You have to trust your mint, but that's not going to be a hindrance to encouraging this technology, because now that transaction can happen. And I really like the distinction of the responsibility is still on the people that would be transacting eCash. They need to figure out how if they're doing it somewhere where they think it's safe and they trust it and all of those things. I love that that's how it plays out, where it continues to tell people, well, you still need to be responsible, even though this is credit and you're a little less responsible. But still no one's going to be able to recover your money.
Yeah. And the thing about Bitcoin in particular is that we've kind of got this talking point that like no one can take your Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, no one can take your Bitcoin, but you'll probably lose your Bitcoin before someone takes your Bitcoin, right? If you're not a responsible person, you'll probably lose your Bitcoin before someone breaks into your house and steals it from you. And that's why you got it, your seed phrase, like etched in metal, buried in the basement. Like you're worried about someone taking it from you, but like you'll probably lose it before someone does that. And so this idea of responsibility, it permeates through the sovereign engineering concepts, because to be sovereign is to take responsibility, right? It's like, we were talking to your, we were talking to your parents, but your sister, we were talking to somebody about Keon in school. And I was like, the kids can't read in school.
Yeah, they can't.
So like, I'll take the responsibility on that. It's my responsibility to teach Keon how to read, but don't force me to send him away for 8 hours a day to learn how to read. I'll do it. And if he can't read, it's my fault. And I'm not going to blame a teacher or I'm not going to be at some PTA meeting screaming or doing fundraisers for school books. I'm not doing any of that. It's just my responsibility. Keon can read, great. Your kid can't read, that's your problem, not mine. That idea of responsibility is why things like Cashu will work, is because there are people that can operate those types of things in an honest fashion. They do exist. So the design of eCash and mints is what I have shifted NextBlock's design into, which is we have this idea of the product Billboard that we want to launch in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And instead of Billboard being a NextBlock only product, Billboard is what we are calling this decentralized content promotion system that will exist on Nostr. Everyone will be able to have their own billboard. Everyone will be able to basically do everything that we're doing. We've defined a protocol that will be announced at the end of Sovereign Engineering, and I'm still working on it to make it more announceable. But as long as you're compliant with that protocol that we've put together, which is very similar to how DVMCP works and very similar to how Cashu works, right? As long as you're compliant with that, then fundamentally we should all be able to be billboards decentralized on Nostr. And what that means is you are the operator of your billboard. And if someone trusts you to facilitate the transaction between a buyer and a seller, that's on you. That has nothing to do with NextBlock. So if advertisers want to advertise on your billboard and you don't have bot protection and you don't have ways to prove that you didn't waste all their money, they probably won't want to give you more money. And so what we're doing at NextBlock is saying we're trying to build a thing that conforms to that idea, that gives the people that want to promote stuff some layer of confidence that we're not wasting their money by showing ads to bots.
Funny enough, my task at hand right now is to work on our terms of use and our terms of service and our privacy policy. And it's a really interesting write-up to have to do in the context of this technology. And so I've done some of it, but I need my CTO's help. These are interesting times. NextBlock is a really interesting company, and I just feel really fortunate that we're here with everything that you've learned, everything I'm learning. Very excited about what we're about to put out in the world. It's going to be great.
Gotta be something.
Get the power back, get the freedom back, get an M pub, and just start with that.